Good morning from Panhandle Outdoors, America's only daily outdoor TV show. Your source for fishing, hunting, and information for folks who enjoy the great outdoors. Now sit back, relax. It's Panhandle Outdoors.
Good morning and welcome to Panhandle Outdoors. I am Bill Allen. Today is Monday, October the 8th, Columbus Day. I know a lot of you are not working today. We got a very, very special show lined up for you with a little bit different format for you today, but I want to get right into the weather. We're looking at a high in the mid-80s with a low about 73, a 30% chance of rain during the afternoon. Wind east-northeast at 10 to 12. You can always add a little bit more to that. And sunrise and sunset, as we've all experienced, is starting to change a little bit. The sunrise is at 6:40. Sunset is at 6:26. Getting darker a little bit earlier. Tide, we're in a 4-tide situation today with the first low at 4:30, the high at 12:10, and then the low at 5:40 afternoon and 11:12 in the afternoon. And that's on a new moon phase that we're in. We do have some minor peak times today, which is 6:40 a.m. to 9:40 a.m. And then in the afternoon, 6:26 to 7:26, which is virtually coincides with sunset and sunrise today. Looking over at Appalachia, it is at 2.2 feet and a slow fall. Choctawhatchee is 4.2 and a slow fall. So again, without saying, when you're running the river over there, a lot of things sticking up that you don't necessarily know or have seen before. You need to be careful running around, but it does concentrate fish. It's a great time to consider freshwater fishing too. Now, before we take this break, I've got several guys here joining me that we're going to discuss fall and the cooling water and how we approach it, the different techniques that we use, and then go on into wintertime fishing, which is probably going to take 2 shows. So if you can bear with us, we'll be on tomorrow as well. But let's take this quick break and come right back. Do not change the channel. This is not a police lineup.
Well, it might be.
Give us, well, as far as you know, yeah. Give us a minute here, and we've got a different format for the next 2 shows, actually, where we've gathered some of the finest fishermen in Northwest Florida and Mark, and we're going to talk about this change in the weather. The water's getting cooler, the fish are acting different. Matt and I have done this show before, but very popular, and Mark and I did one about how we're going to change our patterns, because I can promise you these gentlemen right here, nobody's boat gets winterized.
No.
And it gets pretty active if you know where to look and what to look with. So and Winston and I have talked about this format for some time, so any of you guys or ladies out there who have ideas about what you would like us to talk about or a similar group to talk about, we might try to do like 1 show a month like this, or 2, where we take your questions on how to do something or why we do something or whatever it is, and between all of us, we're bound to come up with one reasonable answer. Would that be fair?
Or a plausible answer.
Or a plausible answer, right, that we can't be held liable for. So this panel, at the end, you've got the Honorable Greg Brudnicki, Mayor and an excellent fisherman. Artie Digsby, I know everybody knows Artie's. Not much to say about him. He's fished this waters his entire life. And he's going to bring a different perspective a little bit, because Artie does a lot of live bait fishing. So which is great, till you learn how to fish, and then you fish with artificial stuff. So, and then Captain Matt Smith, who was like me, born in this water, I think. Successfully fished a bass trail for a while, saw the light, came over to redfish, and is,
Never look back.
And is guiding and a valuable source on the water. And Mr. Mark Coward, our pretty much full-time tournament anglers here. We tried to get Mark and Michael, his son and partner, but Michael had a trip this morning, so we let Mark come in.
Had to settle for me.
Yeah. So, and then I'm Bill Allen. So, you got people who have been on this water for many, many years and fished the transitions, and in this little introduction period, I guess if you could give one short thing, kind of a setup for what we're moving into, Greg, when it starts to get cold, first thing you think about?
Well,
now we're talking trout and redfish right now.
Yeah, you want the weather to stay the same, So what happens is when it starts to get cold, they got to get used to the change. And so a lot of times there's a period where you really don't know where they are because they don't really know where they need to be. But as it gets cooler, they will head for deeper water. And so eventually you'll go from fishing in the real super skinny water to fishing in deeper water. But then even during those times, later on in the day, they will come back out of that deeper water and sometimes get back up in the skinnier water. It really depends on how cold it gets.
That's right.
So, and you just watch your water temperatures. I remember fishing before where Bill and I were over there trolling over there by St. Joe, and we were in 58 degree, 57 degree water, and every time it hit 58 degrees, we got a strike. Because that one little degree difference, that's where the fish gathered up. So, that's one of the things you can talk about.
Anybody? Throw something out.
We're going to run short on time here. I'll try to make it short and sweet. One of the things I enjoy about this time of year is it is a transitional time of year, and whether you're fishing in the summer or the winter, like Greg said, you look for consistency. This time of year you don't usually have it because things are constantly moving, bait, fish, and one of the things I enjoy or is the most rewarding as a guide is to go out and not necessarily have a set plan, but constantly be watching, and it might be birds diving, it might be looking for bait, it may be just checking areas that I haven't fished in a while, looking for something, fish that moment, and that happens a lot this time of year where you...
Amen. All right, we're going to come back, we're going to expand on that and then talk about some techniques. Welcome back. I hope you're still here. I want to add a little bit to what's been said, and what you hear underneath is you have to be versatile when the weather first starts to change.
That's right.
And the water first starts to change, and you don't know what they're going to react to at a certain point. And frankly, to catch fish this time of year, you have to have a bag full of stuff, which is
That's right.
no problem for any of us. The suitcase is full, but you got to burn a little fuel.
That's right.
You have to look. Fishing consistently in a place that does not have fish in it is typically not that good. So, have an idea that morning if you're going to an area. Man, today you look at Google Earth, you can see depths, you can see patterns, and so have an idea of how you're going to approach these areas and fish them. So you have to burn some fuel, and you have to be ready to throw something different in there.
That's right. Well, we were talking just a little while ago about the transition. For us, this time of year, it's still warm. And as we roll over, hopefully these next 2 to 3 weeks, you'll start to see a change. The nights will get cooler. So in a way, you'll have two patterns. As it gets cooler, you're still going to have, as that water cools off, just a little bit. It only takes 2 or 3 degrees to make those fish really click on and start feeding. Because it's just like a bear, it's like any animal, the deer, whatever, they'll start eating this time of year, trying to bulk up, getting ready for the winter. So what happens is that in the morning, the bite could be a completely different bite. As the sun gets up, the water jumps back up upper 70s, low 80s, then it goes right back to a summer pattern. So you have to be prepared that this time of year, especially when those first cold fronts are coming through, early in the morning, fishing could be completely different. So be prepared, have everything you need. For example, you might downsize your size spoon. If you got shrimp popping or whatever, like during the shrimp hatch, for example, go from a 1/4 ounce spoon to an 1/8 ounce spoon. Go to a copper spoon instead of a gold spoon. But in the day, and once that sun gets up, so in other words, if you're a topwater guy, that topwater may not be till 9 or 10 o'clock. Is the water warms up a little bit and they start moving up a little bit. So you have to be prepared. You have to be versatile at the beginning of the transition.
Well, another good thing is when the fall pattern starts, you don't have to get up as early as you do.
That's exactly right.
That's right.
True.
So
That's right.
you sleep in a little bit.
That's right.
That's right.
That's right.
That's nice.
It is nice, and sometimes that east wind first thing in the morning, the east wind at
pretty
20,
hard.
20 knots to start your day just
Yeah.
doesn't always,
Well,
it always conducive to.
Yeah, it was that way this morning.
It was that way this
And then
morning.
you got to deal with the black flies.
That's right. That's right. So just, I guess, moral of the story there, I think we all can agree on that. Not many things we're probably going to agree on, but be versatile, keep an open mind, and
That's right.
be willing to change. I think
right.
that's a tough thing to do. Just as with human nature, is we all get something set in our mind and we stick with it. And sometimes that can prevail.
That's
but
right.
More times than not on the water, because you have so many variables, most of which are out of your control. You're better off to change. And that's something you learn with time, knowledge
That's right.
and experience, and go, well, I can draw back on previous experience or time on the water, and sometimes you just have that gut feeling, let's go do something different. And
That's
a lot of times those are the days that you really kind of stumble onto something.
Well, that's true. We've got some pictures, Jeff. I don't know when he's going to show them, but from last Thursday when Greg and I went, we had that east wind, when we had a good tide, and we started off, of course, topwater, and it was all right. Well, we got a couple of fish, 2 or 3 decent fish, but it just wasn't right. So Greg is immediately going to the Paul Brown, the searching bait there, I switched. I started throwing a plastic maybe up higher in the weeds, and they just didn't seem to be there. But in the end, after several things, Greg threw a redfish magic, and I switched to a Z-Man. I've been reluctant on that, but I'll tell you this: I made one cast and with a shrimp, had an 18.5 trout. And Greg made the very first cast he made when he switched over, pulled in about a 26-inch redfish on it. So we got a little more believers after that, leaning towards the Z-Man kind of the world. But we started fishing the bait slower, and we started fishing them down. They were weighted down. We were hopping them around the bottom, and then we wound up on a day where we lost count. We had 10, maybe 11 redfish. But by the time we really started to catch fish, we'd been through 3 or 4 different baits, and it set up a drift in that wind, trying to see what kind of we were inside of the bank on most of that stuff.
I think one of the things that we would probably all agree on, the colder the water gets, the more you slow down.
That's
your
right.
bait.
Absolutely.
I mean, it will get to the point where in the wintertime, when it is really chilly and the water gets down in the 50s, you can throw a mirror lure out in deeper water, and just barely move it where you have a sand bottom. You can feel the bottom of those trebles bumping the sand, and the fish, all of a sudden it stops.
Yeah.
And you have to, and then he's on there.
Yeah.
Because they just move so slow. So the colder it gets, the more you got to slow your bait down. I know that's always been the case.
That's right.
Hardy, you'd probably agree too. In those conditions, it's a lot of times it can be an area the size of your boat.
Yeah.
We talk about covering water this time of year and how much water you cover. If you're in you're in the right area and the fish are there, the
One after the other.
best thing you can do is really slow it down, if not lock down, if you have an opportunity, and just sometimes repeated cast the same place.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of people don't realize, is the redfish in particular, the colder the water gets is that transition. Those fish start to really school up. They'll bunch up. And in the summer, they'll start to spread out. They're not you don't see the large schools of redfish. Last year in January, we were out and we were doing some filming with one of our sponsors, Avo, and they had the drone up. And so we all of a sudden realized, I've never looked down in our water from a drone. So I'm looking at that video the couple of days later, and all of a sudden, there's a wad of redfish, just a wad. And everywhere around it, there was just one or two scattered around, but there were 200 or 300 redfish sitting there. And they were barely moving. They were just kind of just meandering, and unlike mullet, where the mullet will get in a line and run, mullet are like they're going somewhere. Right. Redfish sometimes don't do that. They're like cattle grazing. Yeah. And, you just have to be aware of what's going on. Like he said, in the winter, when we go through this transition and that water drops into the 70s, these fish will turn on, they'll start feeding. When it drops to the low 70s for us, that's when we really start slowing it down. It gets in the upper 60s, the fish are still feeding, they're active, but once you drop into the lower 60s, upper 50s, you got to slow down. We start looking for dark bottoms that time of year because we're trying to find that dark bottom holds the heat longer.
Yeah. Correct.
So
water heats up quicker.
Hold on, hold this thought. We do have to take a break, pay the bills, but we will be right back to continue this. Welcome back. Continue those thoughts, guys.
So what I was just saying is that the colder the water gets, we start looking for more dark bottoms is what I was just trying to make the point of, is that because the white sand's reflecting the heat, so the summer they'll go to those bottoms more. In the winter, and they'll stay away more from the dark bottoms in the summer, but in the winter, we find we start targeting the dark bottoms.
Makes sense.
On live bait, Artie, you do a lot of live bait fishing. I rely on it with the charters.
In the summertime, I like to catch live bait and then get away from the boat and wade.
Yep.
And then I got a little plastic bat that I cut.
Yep.
Fill that bat full of bait, throw it out there and chum it, get a fish fired up, and just free line. Tail-wise, if you can find them a good size.
That's right.
Absolutely. It's been a little bit of a challenge this year.
Oh, yeah.
The bait's been probably as inconsistent as I've seen, and interestingly, I guess with the weather and with the fresh water, we've just got random schools of bait. I'm sure you guys have seen it on the flats.
Yeah.
With the fishing artificials, just random schools of bait in places that you just don't normally see them.
We never saw them before, hardly.
And so that's been a factor. And there's been days with the live bait where I felt like we didn't really have much of an advantage because there was too much bait.
Well, it's good to have different mesh nets. I got a 1/4-inch mesh, I got a 3/8 mesh, and the 1/4-inch is the best.
Sure it is.
Then you got to stand and try to pull them through the mesh to get them out of the bait.
That's it. That's it.
Good. All right, everybody's looking at me. We're winding down on this, but remember we're going into another show, so let's do just a real quick best advice right now in these conditions. And mine is to burn some fuel and to be ready with not only your baits but your rods to fish differently wherever you go, and try to find out what they're after there. We all keep way too many rods rigged up, but they're always something different. So be ready to put something out there. Don't get stuck with I'm going to fish this until they catch it, until they want it. Not always the best idea.
Well, for us, one of the things this time of year, because we're still dealing with almost a summer pattern right now, we're looking for wading birds, we're looking for herons wading, we're looking for smaller seagulls diving, not necessarily the pelicans diving out in the deeper water, but we're looking for fish feeding, because once you find those birds feeding, then you got the bait. The bird, you got to remember, nothing in wildlife is burning calories except to eat.
That's right.
They're not out flying for fun. They're flying for food.
That's right.
And so if they're finding food, they're telling you, okay, there's bait here. A fish is not concerned about a seagull feeding.
Right.
It's not worried about it. So that's a really good thought. Look for that. That's the first thing for us we're doing, especially bringing a fish someplace new. We're going to look for wildlife activity, birds, diving, things like that.
One of the things I like to do, you can apply this with fishing with artificials or live bait, is try, if you have the opportunity to try more things than one at once, do that.
No doubt.
If you've got 2 people in the boat, 2 lines or 3 lines, everybody at least start off trying something different.
That's
and
right.
then I do that with the live bait. If I've got 4 people on my boat, I want 2 people fishing a live bait up top, and I want 2 people fishing
That's
a live
right.
bait on the bottom. And it amazes me to this
That's
day
huge.
how many times at daylight, when you think that bait right on the surface would be the top producer, and the baits on the bottom get bit, and then you can reverse it, and then when the sun gets up and you think the bottom would be where it's at, the fish come up to feed because of all the variables we talked about. Right. So just don't sell yourself short on trying that. Let the fish tell you what they want, and you can apply that with artificials or live bait, like I say.
That's a great tip.
And be quiet. Find a flat that nobody's on it. Because you think about it, if you're all summer long, the fish are hearing the motors.
Absolutely.
All the banging. So I try to find a place, and so what I like to get out of the boat and wade, because then you're kind of sneaking up on the fish, and you're next thing you know, you're chumming that live bait out there, and they're like dinner bell.
Huge advantage getting water.
Yeah.
And you cover more thoroughly.
No, well, you actually end up fishing.
And it's cooler.
Still
90-something degrees.
Still love to get out and wade.
Yeah.
We've waded hundreds of miles.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, you get real in touch with an area when you're wading it.
And have good booties.
Yep.
Have some shoes on. Don't do it
absolutely
barefooted.
It's the only way we ever did it when I was growing up. Beach Drive. People used to be driving down Beach Drive and scream at us. Ah! You know, we're out there, it's just about dark, but we caught a lot of fish doing that.
Beach Drive was a spot.
It was.
And it's probably still good today.
It would be, you know, I guess and that's the same.
That's back when there was a little boat ramp right there at Lake Caroline, where Lake Caroline emptied into the bay.
Correct.
That's where my granddad used to take us.
Yeah, we waded that for years, and we had a big wash tub that we put inside. That we put inside an inner tube, and
we're all running by where the fish are at 50, 60 miles an hour.
Yeah, and advice when I know yesterday it's windier and windier, and when it's really, really windy, and you're moving along, and you catch a fish, stop.
Yeah, power pole down, man. Power pole down.
Soak that area a little bit before you keep going, because if you're going along and you haven't had a hit, and then you get a hit, then you'll probably get another hit.
Yeah, you're going to drift over those fish.
But you're going to be gone past them.
Yeah.
So just remember to stop. If you don't have a power pole, put the anchor in. It's worth the time and effort.
I'd go as far to say that if you don't have a power pole, trade your trolling motor and get one. You're better off not chasing them and sitting there for them. So
that's exactly right.
Hey, we've had a great time. I hope you did. We're going to be back tomorrow discussing some more cold water fishing, and God bless.
Thanks for watching America's only daily outdoor TV show, Panhandle Outdoors with Winston Chester, featuring hunting, fishing, and other activities and information to help you enjoy the great outdoors. Join us next time for Panhandle Outdoors.